Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph, 20 lines down. Ilvahu al Sadehu. Mishnah said that if someone lends someone else money, the security of his field, meaning if you don't pay back within 3 years, then the field that you own shall be mine, and the guy doesn't pay back, he gets it. Amar Rav Huna. Bishat matan ma'ot. If they made that condition at the time the money was given, yani the time of the loan, kana hakol, then it does work. La'ach matan ma'ot. But if you made the agreement after the loan already happened, lo kana ela keneged ma'otav. You can only acquire the part of the field according to the amount he's owed. So right now we're talking about, mentioned in Mishnah as well, that the field is worth much more than the loan. That's why there's even a discussion. And therefore, if he made the agreement beforehand, the hidush is that you keep the field even though it's $3,000 and the loan is 1,000. However, we're saying now that if it's after the loan has already happened, you only get $1,000 worth. Rahman says, even afterward, it works for the whole thing. Abar Rahman Uvda, one time Rahman made the case, Gaberesh Kaluta, in the house of the Resh Kaluta, the chief, Kishma according to his own teaching, yani you get it the entire field. And he made a star, a document for that. Bidah tore it up. Amar Resh Kaluta said, Rav Yehuda Karal Shtarachai. Resh Kaluta told Rav Nachman, the Resh that Yehuda tore up your document. Amar Leh, he said, was it a child that tore it up? Gavra Rabba Kareh was a great man. Hazabet Kareh. It must be had a good reason. Meaning he's saying if the fact that Rabbi Yehuda tore it up, there must be had a good reason. Some people say it didn't happen. Amar le darje ka kare must be a child that tore it up. The kula alme legabe didi bedina because everybody else compared to me in regards to civil law is considered children. Hadam Rahman then said, even at the time the money was given, you do not acquire it. Even if you had an agreement, you retracted everything. And it works, right? We brought a question against Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said it never works. Our Mishnah clearly said it does work. He says no. I hold that an asmachta, right? We said this is the case. An asmachta means an agreement that technically could be seen as an exaggeration or not as a real agreement. I didn't think it was going to happen. I said yes, but I didn't think it was going to happen. Therefore, there should be no kinyan. And it's like, oh, yeah, I'll give him $1,000,000. Doesn't work. Menyumi, this rabbi, holds that an asmachta is not kohen. So I hold like Menyumi against the Mishnah. Or Menyumi Kashimatin, so how does the Menyumi fit with the Mishnah that said it does work? Ibatema, there's two answers. Masatin Rabbi Yossi here, Halacha, the Mishnah Rabbi Yossi, the Amar Asmach the Kanyan holds that an asmachta does work, and that's why the Kinyan goes through. Ibatema, different answer. The Amalek Kenim Achshab, where the guy said you acquired from now. Since he's saying acquiring it from now, you can't say that that's an asmachta anymore, but rather a full-fledged kinyan. Amr Mar Yenuka Umar Kashisha Bened Rav Chisda Rav Ashi. Mar Yenuka and Mar Kashisha, the sons of Rav Chisda, which by the way means the Mar Junior and Mar Senior, sons of Rav Chisda, because he named both of them Mar. Don't try that at home. So they said to Rav Ashi, the following was said, at the time where it's prescribed to happen, it works. But if it's not the right time, it doesn't work. Sounds like that the lender acquires the field only if he didn't pay when the borrower did not pay at the time of the date. He says to him, everything is binding at the right time. Of course. Why would I think that it doesn't work not in the right time? What's the hidush? We say no. This is what maybe meant to say. If a borrower said during the time of the loan, he said, "You know what? I can't make the money. I can't get back the money. Maybe you should just keep the field." Kani, it works. But let's say he met after the due date and says, "You know what? Take the field." Lo, kani, it doesn't work. My time, why? Because he's saying him out of embarrassment. He doesn't want to acquire the field. He just knows the time has passed, and he says, "Okay, if you want to take the field, take the field." The Gemara says that's not the case. The field, because even during the loan, he also not koneh. So why would he tell him? So why is the borrower telling him you're acquiring the field? Because the borrower is thinking to himself, if I push him off with this field, he's not going to bother me to pay him back at the time. Amara Papa, Haya Smachta, the case of an Asmachta, Zimnin Kanyab, Zimnin Lo Kanyab. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. If on the due date you find the guy drinking beer instead of trying to pay back the loan, Kani, he acquired it. you acquire the field because the guy's obviously not trying to get it back. He must think that you're taking the field. But if he's on the due date, he's looking around for money, trying to gather funds. Look, honey, you don't acquire the field because obviously he doesn't want you to acquire it. Maybe the guy is drinking is not a reason that he's acting nonchalantly that he's giving up on the field. Rather, he's anxious and he's drinking to get over it. Maybe he's someone else is raising the funds for him. That's why he's drinking. That's not a reason to assume that it works. When it says if he's worried about the price, right? So this is the new thing. If the borrower is worried about the price of his possessions, then it works. Which means if he is being stingy and not trying to sell anything, this is the new criteria for an esmacha. If the guy is selling anything he can to get the funds to pay him back, then it's not koneh. But if he's sitting there having a garage sale but not selling anything on purpose, not trying to gather funds, then you could take the field. Amar hold on a second. Maybe he's holding. I'm trying to get a good price because I don't want my property to be devalued. That's why I'm not being stingy. If the guy is particular about selling any land, then you can acquire that land. The fact that he's not trying to sell it shows that he's forfeiting that field. Even though we know that Asmach is not koneh, a field can be an aputiki, which means we say an aputiki we've had before many times. Apo tehe kai. Here it shall stand, which means that when someone's giving a loan and he says aputiki means that if I don't pay back the money, you could take this field or this item. So he says it does work. Did the borrower tell the lender acquire the field for the debt? Right. So why would Yani he didn't say that? So why would it work? If the borrower said acquire the field to collect the debt, of course would it work? Even that wouldn't work. That's also concerned with smachta. So now we have to figure out what's going on. What's the case about apotiki? He tells him, if I don't pay back in 3 years, you will not receive payment except from this property. That's an apotiki. That's a substitute instead of the funds. There's a bin land to his friend with a guarantee that if it gets stolen, he'll pay him back. Amarle, the buyer told the seller, Itarfu leminai. This is a very interesting case. He says, if one of the people who I owe money to takes the field from you, magbet li me'ide idit idlach. I want you to pay me back with your best of your best field. We'll call it the $1 million field. Amarle, he said back to him, no, I don't want to give you the $1 million field with it to pay back. Because I want it. Rather, I'll give you the great quality one, the $500,000 one. But don't worry, I won't give you the $100,000 one. And that was the sale. Let's off to the fuamine. In the end, the $1 million, the sale land was taken away. Ata bidka shakil idit, and a flood wiped out the $1 million field. Savara Papa, the Memar Papa wanted to say, Me'idit Amada. He said, I'm going to give you my best quality, the $500,000 one. And Hakaiman is still there. He says, you have to go into the reasoning behind it. The guy could tell the buyer, when I told you that I want to give you my best quality land, because that was because I had the $1 million land. Hashta, but now that I don't have the $1 million land and the $500,000 is the best, the second best one, the $500,000 one, is my new quote unquote $1 million field. It's not my new best field, and therefore I have to give you $100,000 field. Rav Bar Shaba have a masik be Rav Kahana Zuzer. Bar Shaba owed money to Rav Kahana. Amar Le told Rav Kahana, Ilo Parana me Ilon Pon, if I don't pay back by January 1st, Geve me Hamra, take payment from this wine. And he didn't pay back. Savara Papal Mimar, Kiamrin and Smata Lokanya, when we say that Nesmach doesn't work, Hani Mil Barada only works by land. The law the Zabuni came out because you don't usually sell land. Avachamra, Kevin is Zabuni Kai, but since wine is usually sold, Kizuzam is considered like cash, and therefore, since he agreed to the wine, it could work. No, any type of condition that has the word if is not koneh. Meaning, The fact that he said if shows that it's not binding. It's too sketchy as an asmachta. The only way to really make a good condition is by saying when you collect the debt, you can only collect from here, like we said before, like an apoteki. Amar Nachman. Hashtag the Amar Nachman. Now we know the asmachta doesn't work according to the Chachamim. Haddar Arab, Haddar Pere. If the guy still took it, they said, okay, you'll take the land. He's not supposed to take the land because the asmachta is not koneh. What if the guy took it? He has to return the land and the fruits. Remember, Rahman, Mechila, Beta'ud, Lo have a Mechila. Sounds like Rahman holds that a mistaken waiver is not a good waiver, which means if I accidentally am mochel something, does that work or not? Va'itmar, but we know how mocher if someone sells the fruits of his date tree to his friend, and he did a kinyan, Amar Rav Huna, when it says ad shelo ba'u la'olam yachol harbot, there's no dates yet in the world, they didn't grow yet, you can withdraw. But once they grow, you can't withdraw because now it takes effect because the dates grew. Rabbi Nachman says no. Even when the dates do grow, you can withdraw because there was no good sale. And he says, Modina de ishamid va'achil. But I still agree that if you ate from the tree without the consent, you don't have to do a refund because that is like a waiver that's by mistake. So we see that you are mochel in that case by the sale. The Gemara says exactly. Hatam zvini, that was specifically the case of a sale. You're mochel. But by a loan, you are not mochel. Amar Rabba says, Haviativna b'kamedi Rav Nachman. I was saying before Rav Nachman talking about a mistaken waiver. And I wanted to ask him a question from price fraud. V'odik, but he answered my question with chazitan da'alonit, and he showed me the halacha of an ilonit. So, which means an ilonit is a woman who cannot have children. And a woman who can't have children, the marriage is null and void if they find out that she's an ilonit. So, what is going on? Regarding the price fraud, the question was the mechila b'ta'uti. That's considered a mistaken waiver that you're giving into. And we see that you have to refund him. That was his initial question. But then he said, he answered me with the case of alonit because regarding an alonit who gets married, the mechila b'ta'uti, that's also a case of mistaken marriage, mistaken kinyan yani, because she's allowing him to take her property when they get married. The mechila b'ta'uti, the husband does not need to return any apples that he ate from her field while they're married. It's not Mishnah says, and it's someone who, a girl who was a minor who was married off when she was a minor, she can refuse and just walk out of the marriage. V'hashniya, second degree relatives who were married illegally, right? Hachamim made a takana that certain relatives are not married, just like regular relatives. This is parasha. Ba'anik and also not only the woman who got married and she was unable to have children, the husband married her, they can get void. And then to look to they don't get a ketubah payment, below perot, they don't get fruits, below mazonot, they don't get money. All these things are voided, below blaot, and not even worn out garments that were brought into the marriage with it. Meaning, all these transactions, quote unquote, that happened are void. And we see that this quote unquote waiver that was made, anything that was consumed by this husband in a marriage that was voided is not refundable. It's valid. Gemara says below, but it's not the case. Lo ona'ah havetiyuf. So the case of ona'ah was not a question because below and also the case of alani was not a proof. Lo ona'atiyuf. So the case of fraud is not a question because the lawyer died to eat it because maybe the guy who was buying it at a price gouging, he doesn't know that he's even getting scammed. So that's not a good proof. Therefore, he wasn't being mochel. Below, and also the case of it's not approved to Rav Nachman. Because maybe the lady who's doing this, that she doesn't have children, maybe she's doing it on purpose. She wants to be married stature with her friends, with herself, and therefore she'd rather have her husband, who will eventually divorce her, eat her fruits from her property and not get paid back because of their marriage stature. And therefore, that's not considered a mechila like that because she was practically mochel from before. Okay, I said there was a woman, the Amra Le'alahu Gavra, who told somebody, her name was Navla, we'll see soon. She told somebody, Zil Zavin Le'ar'a Mikrivai, go be my shaliach and buy me a piece of land from my relatives. Okay. Azaz Banla, he went and he bought it for her. Amar le, before the sale was finished, the seller told the agent, if I have money to buy back, I want to buy back. Amar le, the shliach told him, you and Navla are related. I'm sure you guys can work out a repurchase. Yani, to sell it back to you. Amar kol at v'navla ache amar. Whenever someone says that you and they are relatives, yani that concept, like, oh, I'm sure you guys could work it out. Samcha da'ateh, the seller is having in mind to sell it in that mindset. Below gamaru makne, and therefore it's a good condition. And if he wants to buy back, he's able to buy back. Okay, very interesting concept. The shliach even had power to even make that condition. Ad hadre, and let's say the land goes back when he buys it back. And so the other guy buys it back. Peremai, what's halacha with the fruits that were taken in the meantime? Ribit kituza havu, is it considered like prearranged interest? Because now you bought it for the field for 1 million, sold it back for 1 million as agreed to. The guy ate $100,000 worth of fruits in the meantime. Is that considered interest? We assume that therefore is refundable by the Betin. Odima ki avak ribit have a, let me just like the secondary ribit, avak ribit, that's dust of ribit, be'enotin, and therefore it's not recoverable. Marabaravuna ki avak ribit have, it's considered avak ribit. Be'enotin then and it's not refundable. Fakana marava avak ki avak have be'enotin ribit, he agrees. Amar rava, mashkantamai, what about a pledged property? Meaning a field was used as collateral for a loan, and the lender was in the meantime using the crops. Does he have to refund those? What's the case regarding the first case by the seller? What's the reason that you can't recover it? Mishum de lo katzle, because it was not explicitly arranged for the guy to take the fruits or not. Hachanami lo katzle. Maybe over here also, there was no arrangement to take the crops in the meantime. Odimma hatam zvini. Maybe the case by the sale was considered avak ribit, and therefore it was considered that's what it was because by a sale. But over here by a loan, it's different. Maybe over here, it should be considered duraita because it's a loan. The case of the field of the seller, what's the reason why it's considered avak ribit and therefore not refundable? Mishum de lo katzle, because there's no settlement. Hachanam lo katzle, and therefore also here no settlement and therefore not recoverable. Amar Papi, Avad Ravina Uvda. One time Ravina made a halacha in a case where the guy sold the field, but the guy bought it back. The hajib, the apik pere, he calculated the amount of fruits the guy had used, and he made him refund it. The lokri Baba Rav Huna against Rabbi Rav Huna, who said that it's not refundable. Baruch Amen. Amen.